In a small farming community with a population of around 18,000, God chose to work a work. Today, we see its fruit of 50 years through the many "but God" moments Nampa Christian has experienced. The story began in the late 50s and early 60s when 3 Christian schools, College High, Boulevard Christian, and the Nampa Mennonite School, were experiencing strenuous financial times. These 3 schools, with different denominational backgrounds, came together, agreeing it would be better to unite than to perish. They would unite under the banner of Nampa Christian Schools Foundation, with the mission to be a non-denominational, biblically based school with a common goal to prepare students for a lifetime of faithfulness to Christ.
My dad was a very generous, God-loving man. He was always interested in furthering the kingdom of God. And so when they approached him about a Christian school, he wanted to donate that land. And then in 1959, in May, he had a stroke. And my brothers brought him the papers to sign so that he could donate that land. And he signed the paperwork the day before he died. I really didn't know that that was his wishes at the time. In fact, I only found out about 2 years ago when my son was on the board. They were doing a history and told my son that the man that had donated the land was F.T. Horton. And my son said to him, "That's my grandfather."
The 3 schools had united and God had provided the land. Then the Army barracks used for College High was moved over from Northwest Nazarene College to the Orchard location. But, as in any birth, the critical moments of survival came instantly, and the school experienced financial difficulties early.
In those times, the money was extremely tight. The 64 was such a touch and go that fall because they didn't know whether they could open it.
But the Farwell family that mortgaged their farm, if this family would not have donated their farm, mortgaged their farm, we would not be where we were today, but God came through.
I found it fascinating to observe all the different denominations and churches that people came from. It was an education for us kids to observe other denominations and what they believed and what they didn't believe, or what they accepted and they didn't accept. It always seemed to cement what you believed or what you didn't believe. And yet we played together, we worked together, we fought together.
We were wondering sometimes if we were even going to get the monthly pay. So
they would give food for the families' teachers so that they could eat because they didn't have enough money in which to pay their salaries. And they'd make sure that they had food coming in so they at least got to eat.
The school was stressed by its lack of facilities and 3 different campus locations, which spanned from one end of the city to the other.
I did 3rd and 4th grade at Boulevard Christian. That's on Ustick, out in very, very tiny, small 4-room schoolhouse.
Junior high was at the Mennonite school. That was over on North Side.
One of our priorities was to try to get the gym started.
It would take the greater part of the decade to add the much-needed gym, but God provided the financial means through individuals who were willing to make the sacrifice. The 1968 basketball team would be the first to call it home court.
We were so thrilled with that gymnasium. It was something that we could have our own graduation exercises.
It was during the 60s the Lord provided within the school 3 pillars: Cecil Campbell, Thelma Kretz, and Jackie Neely.
Number 1 for this school, without doubt, was Cecil Campbell.
At 7 in the morning, Cease would be there. At 6 o'clock at night, Cease would be there because he was the principal. He was our coach, and he was our history teacher. He did everything.
Cease was the guy that taught me to be a servant. He got honored they had this assembly.
It wasn't an easy job. It was even quite a job to learn to run run the equipment. And I thought, well, he'll probably give up before it's done. But I don't have to tell you that this person is not a quitter. And that's the reason that we have a nice athletic field out there today.
But as I sat there and I watched them honor him, and I saw the dedication that he had already put in, like the 25 years and, you know, coming up to 30 years that by that time.
He has paid tuition for many, many kids.
I thought to myself, I could dedicate my life to a place like he did.
It says, Mr. Nampa Christian, our beloved fellow servant, a faithful minister of Christ.
I didn't recognize you that much for a while until he said you carried a big stick, and everybody recognized you.
And Thelma Kratz ran the grade school like I think a grade school ought to be run. Not that it isn't now, because it is, but it was just, she built that grade school, and it really, the elementary school, it really ran well.
Very intimidating,
yeah,
but very effective.
I started the kindergarten in '66 and taught for a number of years. And each year wondered whether I should do it again the next year. So when I'd get my contract, I'd set it on the desk in the kitchen where I could see it, and leave it there for a couple weeks and walk past and say, well, Lord, what am I supposed to do this year? Anyway, I kept signing them for 38 years. So. And the first one was half-time for $1,500.
Jackie Neely, fantastic teacher, was here while I was here. Loved the kids. Tough teacher, but loved the kids and got a lot from them.
I could still recite all my helping verbs from the way that she was able to drill those into us over and over.
Jackie taught our janitors. We've had janitors that have come into our school that didn't know how to read and write. And Jackie stayed after school, and the janitor showed up early, and she taught our janitors how to do English, how to do read and write.
Who would all serve over a quarter century together.
What really sticks out in my mind was the class of the people who built the school or laid the foundation. They were tough people. They weren't calloused, but they were focused on a goal, and I think that was what sustained Nampa Christian Schools.
Nampa Christian Schools had persevered through its first decade, establishing a solid foundation. The 70s would usher in a series of events that continued to demonstrate but God moments.
There's legendary stories told of a ring that was sold at the auction.
Prior to the 70s, the auction had humble beginnings. During the 60s, it was known as a rummage sale, and then a symbolic shift took place at the turn of the decade.
They were needing a lot of money for the school and getting pretty desperate. They were having their auction, and everybody was getting excited, and up jumped this woman and ran down to the auctioneer and took her ring off her finger and said, "Here, auction off my wedding ring." To everybody's shock and surprise, of course. And Walter Ott bid and bought it, and then came walking over to her and gave it back.
From the early 70s on, the auction would become a viable financial resource for the school.
It was the turning point in the auction of garage sale items. And when the furniture started coming in, and then they started going around and asking other businesses for furniture, or they might ask them for the money, and the money would buy other furniture, and they started buying the nicer, items and such that could be put on the block, which then really made that auction take off, because once the newer stuff was there, there was no end there for a while. It just jumped, and what it did for the school.
Approaching the latter part of the decade, the campus still stretched across Nampa, and the elementary grades had outgrown the Boulevard Christian building. But God would pave the way for what was needed.
We got $150,000 from the Samaritan Hospital Fund.
During that time, we were able to sell the Boulevard School, which allowed paying off a big debt. We developed a bond program which people from the school was able to put their money in and earn interest, and whether it was $500 or $10,000, we made it so that all kinds of people could be involved in it, and we borrowed money from the people.
So I worked with the architect and we designed the rooms. I wanted great big rooms with the wall at the back that had the cubby holes and the hooks separate from the rest of the classroom, and all the cabinets, and worked with the cabinet maker and even picked out the carpets.
Of course, we had times for families to come in and help. There was a lot of people that helped build that elementary.
The need was there, and God would provide above and beyond what anyone would think possible when the elementary building would be completed with no debt. The Lord had orchestrated the financial windfall and again used the willing hearts of the people, strengthening the unity of the school. God knew what lay ahead, and the significance of having no debt would soon be realized.